Hey gang, John Backrelli here with your Lake St. Clair Fishing Report, brought to you by Sportsmen's Direct. It is Wednesday, October 10th, and water temp at Belle Isle is down to 61 degrees. It was considerably warmer in the last report that we did like 2 weeks ago, and it had been going up and down and all around, and now we are finally, we're cooler now than we've been all fall, so at 61 degrees we are headed in the right direction. As a side note, I went back and I looked at last year's report from like the 11th, and we had just crossed the threshold last year at about the same point where we had shot from like 70 degrees down to like 58 degrees, or we were in the upper 60s and we went down to 58. And we're going to be basically in the next couple of days, we're gonna cross that threshold and be down into the 50s as well. So tracking very similar to last year. It's a great tool to go back and look at our old videos from the last couple of years at the same time, because you'll start to pick up on like when spots are going to come alive. And I was just looking at last year's report, and we were already catching fish in shallower, like out in front of 9 Mile area. So, and I know, well, we'll get to it in a second about the perch bite, but go back and look at those reports from previous years. Look at the water temp. Find the one that's got the closest water temp to where we are right now, and then, check out some of the details in those old reports, because they may help you, go to areas you can get there, before everybody else, because these bites happen every year in the same locations. Okay, maybe not quite as extreme, or maybe the volumes aren't quite as heavy in some of these locations year to year, but those same areas always produce fish every single year. So go back, use those as a reference, and I think they'll help you out and help you stay ahead of the curve instead of being behind the curve. Now, at 61 degrees, the shallows and everything this time of the year are going to be cooler, especially with the cool nights that we've had. And like here at my house, we had like 39 this morning. And we got in this upcoming weather forecast, we've got some nights that are forecasted to be in the 30s. So we could even flirt with some frost in some outlying areas. So we got some cool weather coming. It's going to be warmer. I think tomorrow's going to be the warm day, and then after that, it's just going to be much cooler next week. So we're definitely on the right track. The wind forecast, I think tomorrow's going to start out of the south and then pick up to maybe hit 15 miles an hour. But it looks like early in the day should be really good, and then it's going to pick up. The weather pick for the weekend of the day is going to be Saturday. The weather on Saturday looks pretty darn good. Pretty light winds, kind of variable winds, and then maybe some rain coming in late on Saturday, probably at night, and then a chance of showers maybe on Sunday. But all in all, Saturdays, it looks like it's going to be like maybe the best day out of the three coming in. Today was just gorgeous. We had light winds today. We had a lot of guys out there perch fishing. I didn't get any direct reports today off the water, but I know there was a lot of guys out there, and they've been catching fish all week regardless of whether it was blowing crazy and guys were, fighting 3-footers out there, or whether it was flat, guys have been catching perch. So it's been a really good week for the guys that have gotten out. That north end of the dump, well, not just the north end, but all through the dumping grounds area has still been the hottest bite. There's been some fish being caught up by the B buoy. There's been some guys fishing up in the channel cuts by the mouth where the channels come in. A little bit of activity out by the lighthouse, but by and large, the most activity and the most consistent catches has been down there by the dumping ground area, or at the south end of the lake. But like I was just saying, don't forget about areas like 9 Mile. Don't forget about areas like in front of the 400 Club, out in front of the Coast Guard station. Water temperature's dropping. The weeds are breaking up out there really quick with these blows that we have had. So a lot of the weeds are getting knocked down, getting ripped out, getting broke off, and the fish have got a lot less places to hide now. So they're going to start schooling up tighter and tighter, and they should be easier for you guys to find. Had a pretty good satellite image this week. A lot more color in the water. It has to do with all the winds that we've had. So there's quite a bit of color. So the fish should not be nearly as skittish out there as what they have been. So you should be able to fish a little bit closer to the boat for you bass guys. For you walleye fishermen, the color in the water ought to mean better jigging. We haven't had a lot of activity on the walleye front. I talked with Joel Anderson up at Anderson Pro Bait, and he said it was starting to pick up there as well. And he said he was talking about, guys headed further north right now, fishing for like Atlantics and Steelies and stuff in the harbors, but that the walleye bite was starting to pick up. And but the weather hasn't been all that great for the guys getting out up there either. I know Jerry Toner is still jigging walleyes down in the Detroit River and been taking limits down there pretty consistently. That bite's going to continue to pick up. But what we haven't heard about as far as the walleyes yet is we haven't gotten into a real good, planer board bandit trolling bite down there on the south end yet, but that's coming. And once we get into the 50s in the water temps, which is going to happen in the next week to 10 days, then that bite is going to pick up down there too. And hopefully a lot of these weeds are going to be out of the system. And so you guys won't be having to bale hay constantly down there when you're trolling, which is a big factor this time of the year. If you can't keep your lines clean, you can't keep them in the water, you're not going to catch fish. So, but like I said, the weeds are slowly breaking off and going away, so that's not going to be a factor here nearly as much in the coming weeks. Guys like Garrett Samsel are still out there doing multi-species trips to prove the point that, the bites are still on up there if you know where to go. They're still catching smallies, they're catching sturgeon. I know he's been targeting walleyes up there, and the musky bite seems to be picking up too with the water getting cooler as well. I drive over that spillway all the time on my way into the store, and I look down, and I've definitely seen schools of shad and other bait fish in the spillway, even when I'm going over the spillway on the freeway, and I can see the little schools, the little pockets of bait in there, so I know there's a lot of bait around, and that's going to be drawing fish in. It'll draw perch into the spillway. It's going to draw muskies out there off of the front of it. But what we need to happen is we need that lake water to cool off enough so that the water coming out of the spillway becomes like a warm water discharge, and I think that's happening right now. Now that we're down into the low 60s and getting ready to go into the 50s, you're going to start to see that be more of a factor. Same thing like at Harley Ensign, where the main branch of the Clinton River comes out. They're starting to pick up perch down there offshore as well, and those perch will come into that river mouth, basically is what it is. It's the mouth of the Clinton River, and some of those fish will move upstream into the Clinton. They'll go way up the Clinton. They'll go past downtown Mount Clemens. So there'll eventually be fish all through that system, but a lot of the guys will fish right there in the harbor, right in front of the boat launch, and there'll be guys fishing from shore as well there for perch, and they have started getting perch there, although a lot of them have been small, but guys out in the boats just a little bit further offshore have been doing a little bit better. So like I was saying before, look at some of those old reports, and you'll see me talking about exactly that going on at this time of the year. So try to get ahead of the curve. Try to read between the lines on some of those older reports, and I think you'll do yourself well. Let's see. Crappies and gills. We are starting to get more reports of crappies and gills, some pretty good catches in the various marinas in the area. That's another thing happens this time of the year, and a lot of it has to do with just access, because you can get in there with your boats as these boats are coming out, and every day we're seeing them go by the store. The boats are coming out, getting out of the marinas. Any of these marinas that have dry land or, put the boats up on blocks, they actually give these guys a cutoff date on when their boat has to come out. And so they start pulling these boats. So most of these boats will be out within the next month. By the time we get to the middle of November, these boats are going to be out of there. They'll be out of the marinas. And that means you've got a lot more access to go in there with your small boats and fish for panfish. These marinas are still off limits. They're private as far as going in from shore. So if you can't get in from a boat, you're really going to have to wait till ice up to get into these marinas, because they will boot you out of there pretty darn quick. So just telling you that in advance. I've had guys come in from out of town and they want to go marina fishing and they don't have a boat, and it's like, well, other than fishing off the docks back in the Metro Park, you're pretty limited to dock fishing these days. That's just the way it is. It actually was that way even when I was a kid. Unless you had special permission, you couldn't get into the marinas, and it really hasn't changed much, only they've gotten more restrictive since, 30, 40 years ago, or how long? Yeah, 40 years ago. 45 years ago might be more accurate. We have emerald shiners in the store now. That's been a big issue, is getting emeralds for all summer we generally don't have them. We do have them now, and I think talking to our bait supplier that we should be in stock in emeralds all the way through the rest of the season, hopefully. Now that everything is cooled down as well for them to go catch the emeralds, we've got a good supply of emeralds, so I don't see that changing anytime soon. Wanted to bring up a tip for you guys for perch fishing out there. And what seems to be one of the most productive ways, and my buddy, well, I'll give a shout out to Mike Martin Outdoors, and Jax, who's been out there fishing with him and just putting on a show out there with his perch fishing techniques. But one of the things that these guys are doing out there is not anchoring up on these perch, but using the spot lock on their electric trolling motors, and you fish a pocket of fish using that spot lock, and then when that bite dies or that school gets picked over, then you get on your electric trolling motor and do some I guess call it trolling. I guess you're really doing a controlled drift is what you're doing with the electric trolling motor, and you move along until you find another pocket of fish, hit that spot lock again, and then pick those fish over, and then you just keep doing that. But one of the other things is you're going to find while you're moving, you're going to be literally attracting fish because they want to chase. When perch get up to 10, 11, 12, 13 inches and bigger, they're as much of a predator as a small walleye or a smallmouth is. So at that point, they've got that instinct to chase, and they really like to chase. So by keeping that boat moving, you're gonna get that reaction out of those fish. You're gonna get them to chase. You're gonna actually draw more fish. You're gonna draw like small schools of perch in on you when you're doing that. And I think you're gonna be much more productive on those big fish out in that big open water area like that. It's not like fishing structure, like fishing the reeds or something up there on the north end, where you're fishing fish that are kind of holding tight to structure out there. You're kind of fishing more open water out here. So by moving like that and moving from weed pocket to weed pocket, I think you're going to find your success rates are going to go way up. So that's if you got the trolling motors and spot lock, you can do that. If not, you can kind of cheat it by doing short controlled drifts, with just throwing maybe a sea anchor out or something, drift sock, slowing yourself down, doing a controlled drift, throwing a marker buoy out if you want to go really old school and go back and work that area. Although I will say, if you're going to do that and you're going to power the big motors up and then drive back up and over, I would give that area that you were catching fish a little bit of a berth so that you're not just powering right over top of it, with your big motor running and breaking that school up. So you want to kind of scoot around those fish on like a semicircle and then set your drift back up so that you're going back through that same area, rather than just turning around and powering right over those fish and blowing that school back up, and then when you get there, they're gone. So other thing I guess I can tell you along the same lines, with the fishing with these perch pounders or whether you're using drop shot rigs, flipping away from the boat if you are anchored up and working it back to you. Same thing goes for if you're fishing with slip bobbers, kind of the same deal. Keep that bait moving, and I think your success is going to go up. And I guess with all that said, we'll see you in the shop this weekend. Hopefully the weather behaves nice for you. Hey gang, if you like our content, hit the little subscribe button and the bell icon, and you'll be notified as soon as we put out new stuff.